The frayed elevator doors groaned open at 11:47 p.m., and Garrett Holloway expected nothing more than a forgotten delivery box. What he saw instead made him drop his mop. A woman stumbled inside like a wounded animal seeking shelter from a storm. Her tailored jacket hung torn at the shoulder. Her white blouse clung to a dark stain that Garrett immediately recognized as blood. One foot wore a designer heel. The other was bare, scraped raw against the concrete floor. He recognized her instantly. Every person in America would have recognized that face. Vivian Ashford, CEO of Nexus Technologies, the most powerful woman in Silicon Valley. Her photograph had graced the covers of Forbes, Time, and Wired more times than he could count. But the detail that made Garrett's heart stop beating had nothing to do with fame or fortune. On her wrist, half hidden beneath a smear of blood, was a silver bracelet, delicate, engraved with the image of a bird in flight, the exact same bracelet that Garrett had placed on his wife's wrist the day they buried her 3 years ago. The same bracelet he had personally lowered into the earth. Vivian clutched something wrapped in silk against her chest. Her eyes, once famous for their icy confidence on magazine covers, now appeared wild with fear. She looked at him. She looked at his name tag, and something shifted in her expression. "You're Garrett Holloway," she whispered. Not a question, a statement. The elevator doors began to close. Garrett caught them with his hand, holding them open, holding his breath, holding on to a reality that suddenly felt like sand slipping through his fingers. "How do you know my name?" Vivian swayed, her knees buckled. Garrett caught her before she hit the floor, and as he did, the silk wrapping fell away from the object she had been protecting. A black hard drive. On its surface, written in fading marker, was a single word. "Truth." "Marlena," Vivian breathed, her voice cracking on the name. "She was my best friend. She was the first one to discover what they were doing. And they—" She did not finish the sentence. She did not have to. For 3 long years, Garrett had believed his wife died in a car accident. He had blamed himself for not being there, for not answering her call that night, for letting her drive alone in the rain. He had raised their daughter alone ever since, watching her grow up without a mother, telling her that Mama was watching from the stars. And now he stood in a freight elevator at midnight, holding the only person who might finally tell him what really happened. "I sent the bracelet," Vivian said, her words slurring as consciousness began to fade. "To her grave, anonymously. I couldn't face you, but I needed her to have it. She gave it to me the week before she died. She said if anything happened to her, I should find you." Her eyes fluttered closed. Her body went limp in his arms. And on her Nexus employee badge, which had fallen to the elevator floor, Garrett read 4 words that turned his blood to ice. "Do not exit after board meeting." The drive to his house took 7 minutes. It felt like 7 hours. Garrett kept checking his rearview mirror for headlights. He kept glancing at the woman unconscious in his passenger seat. He kept thinking about Marlena, about the way she used to laugh, about the sound of her voice on the phone that last night, telling him she had discovered something important, something that could not wait until morning. She never made it to morning. His house sat near the rail line on the outskirts of Seattle, small, modest, filled with secondhand furniture, and his daughter's artwork taped to every available wall. A dusty telescope stood by the window, the one Marlena had bought for Ren's 4th birthday, 2 weeks before everything changed, for the murder. The word felt foreign in his mind, sharp.
Tell me the truth. What really happened to my wife?
It wasn't an accident. She found something they wanted buried.
And jagged, like broken glass. He carried Vivian inside and laid her on the couch. The bleeding had slowed. The wound on her shoulder appeared superficial, but the bruises on her face told a story of violence that made his stomach turn. He was reaching for the first aid kit when he heard the soft padding of bare feet on hardwood. "Daddy?" Ren stood in the hallway, her wild curls forming a halo around her sleepy face. Her pajamas were 2 sizes too big, hand-me-downs from a neighbor's child. She clutched her sketchbook against her chest like a shield. 7 years old, eyes that saw too much, a heart that felt too deeply. "Hey, little bird," Garrett said softly. "Go back to bed." But Ren was not looking at him. She was staring at the woman on the couch, her head tilted to one side like a curious sparrow, examining something that had fallen from the squone. Daddy, she said, her voice small but certain. She looks like a princess who just beat a dragon. But the dragon scratched her first. Garrett did not know whether to laugh or cry. Wren walked closer, examining Vivian's face with the serious concentration of a doctor making a diagnosis. Then she reached into the pocket of her pajamas and pulled out a bandage. Butterfly-shaped, pink and sparkly. Daddy says these heal everything, she announced. And before Garrett could stop her, she had pressed the bandage gently onto the bruise on Vivian's cheek. Vivian's eyes fluttered open. For a moment, she simply stared at the child leaning over her, at the wild curls and the serious expression and the small hand still pressed against her face. There, Wren said with satisfaction, the butterfly will make it better. Vivian's lips trembled. Her eyes grew bright with tears she seemed determined not to shed. Thank you, she whispered. Wren nodded solemnly. What's your name? Vivian. That's pretty. Wren climbed onto the couch beside her, settling in as naturally as if they had known each other for years. I'm Wren, like the bird. Mama named me that because she said I came into the world singing. Something broke in Vivian's expression, a crack in the wall she had built around herself. Your mother, she said quietly. She talked about you all the time. She said you were the bravest person she knew. Wren's eyes went wide. You knew my mama? Garrett stepped forward, his throat tight. Wren, sweetheart. She was my best friend, Vivian said. She gave me this bracelet. She made me promise to find you someday. Both of you. Wren looked at the silver bracelet on Vivian's wrist. Then she looked at the photograph on the bookshelf, the one of Marlena wearing the exact same bracelet on her wedding day. Mama's bracelet, she breathed. Daddy, look, it's Mama's bracelet. Garrett could not speak. Years of grief had lodged themselves in his throat like stones. Wren turned back to Vivian, her small face filled with a wisdom that no 7-year-old should possess. Daddy says Mama watches us from the sky. I think maybe she sent you. Because Daddy forgets how to fly sometimes, and he needs someone to remind him. The tears Vivian had been fighting finally spilled over. She reached out and took Wren's hand, this tiny stranger who offered comfort without condition, who saw the world not as it was, but as it could be. I think, Vivian said softly, your mama might have been the bravest person I ever knew too. 6 hours after Vivian collapsed in his elevator, dawn crept through the windows like an apology. Garrett sat at the kitchen table, 2 cups of coffee growing cold between them. Vivian had changed into one of his flannel shirts, the sleeves rolled up past her elbows. It had been Marlena's once. Everything in this house had been Marlena's once. Tell me, he said. Tell me everything. Vivian wrapped her hands around her mug, though she did not drink. Marlena was a senior software engineer at Nexus, one of the best. She was working on what we called Project Chimera. On the surface, it was supposed to be predictive analytics, helping people make better decisions based on data patterns. She paused. Her jaw tightened. But that is not what it became.
They're making me the criminal to cover their crimes.
Then we don't hide. We outsmart them.
Marcus Pemberton, our CFO, he saw the potential for something else, something darker. Chimera could predict behavior, yes, but it could also influence it, manipulate it, shape public opinion, sway elections, control markets, all without anyone knowing they were being controlled. Garrett's hands had gone still on the table, and Marlena found out. She found out, Vivian confirmed. She documented everything, emails, recordings, financial trails. She was going to take it to the FBI. She told me the night before. Her voice broke. The night before her accident, Garrett finished. It was not an accident. Vivian looked up at him, her eyes fierce despite the tears tracking down her cheeks. They killed her, Garrett. Marcus ordered it, made it look like she lost control on a rainy road. And I knew what really happened, and I was too afraid to do anything. All this time, I kept my head down and my mouth shut and told myself I was surviving. She laughed bitterly. I was not surviving. I was complicit. Why now? Garrett asked. What changed? Vivian reached into her pocket and pulled out a USB drive. Small, unremarkable. The kind of thing that could hold the end of the world. Marlena sent me this. The day before she died, I was too scared to open it then. But 2 weeks ago, I finally did. She set the drive on the table between them. It is everything. Every email Marcus sent ordering people to be silenced. Every recording of him approving Chimera. Every name on the list of people they eliminated to keep the secret safe, including Marlena. Garrett stared at the drive. Such a small thing to contain so much destruction. She knew, he said quietly. She knew they would kill her. She knew. And she made sure the evidence would survive, even if she did not. From the hallway came the sound of small feet. Wren appeared in the doorway, her sketchbook in hand. Her curls were wild from sleep. "I made breakfast," she announced proudly. Garrett turned to find the kitchen counter covered in spilled cereal and a truly impressive amount of milk. He should have been exasperated. Instead, he found himself laughing, the sound strange and unfamiliar in his throat. "I made it for the Princess Dragon Fighter," Wren clarified, climbing into the chair beside Vivian. "Because fighting dragons is hungry work." Vivian smiled, really smiled, perhaps for the first time in years. "Thank you, little bird." Wren beamed at the nickname. Then her expression grew serious. "Miss Vivian, are the bad people going to come looking for you?" Vivian and Garrett exchanged a look. "Maybe," Vivian said honestly, "but your daddy and I are going to make sure they cannot hurt anyone else ever again." Wren considered this with the gravity of a philosopher pondering the universe. "Daddy says when you tell the truth, sometimes your tummy hurts because people do not like hearing it. But the hurt goes away, and you feel better." She tilted her head. "Maybe the bad people have really, really big tummy aches because they told really, really big lies." Vivian stared at the child, at this small philosopher who dispensed wisdom like other children dispensed crayon drawings. "I think," she said softly, "you might be exactly right." 2 days had passed since that night in the elevator. 2 days of hiding, 2 days of planning, 2 days of watching Wren slowly adopt Vivian into their small family with the casual certainty of a child who has already made up her mind. That evening, Wren insisted on reading her poem aloud. She stood in the middle of the living room, her sketchbook open to a page filled with careful, looping handwriting. Vivian sat on the couch. Garrett leaned against the doorframe. The evening light painted everything in shades of gold. "It is called The Chair That Waits," Wren announced with the gravity of a poet laureate accepting an award. "I wrote it for school, but I think it is for everyone." She cleared her throat, straightened her spine, and began. "In every house there is a chair that no one dares to sit. It holds the weight of whispered things, of love that never quit. It waits beside the windowsill for stories left untold, for hands that shake but still reach out, for people growing old. Some say it is just a place to rest, but I think it is much more. A chair that keeps the space between the leaving and the door." Silence fell when she finished. The kind of silence that happens when something true has been spoken. Vivian's hands were trembling. Tears streamed down her face, and this time she did not try to hide them. "Wren."
Why are you risking everything for me?
Because my wife died for this, and I won't let you die for it too.
"Wren," she said, her voice barely above a whisper. "That was the most beautiful thing I have ever heard." Wren climbed onto the couch beside her, her small face serious. "Did it make you cry?" "Yes." "Good crying or bad crying?" Vivian thought about the question. Really thought about it. "Good crying, I think. The kind where something inside you that was stuck finally gets unstuck." Wren nodded as if this made perfect sense. "That is what Daddy says about Mama's music. He says sometimes the sad songs make us happy because they let the sad out." She reached over and took Vivian's hand. "Your poem heard things you did not know how to say. That means it was listening." Later that evening, after Wren had gone to bed, the television in the corner flickered to life. Garrett had turned it on to check the news. What appeared on screen made both of them freeze. Marcus Pemberton stood behind a podium bristling with microphones, his charcoal suit immaculate, his expression arranged into something that almost resembled concern. "Vivian Ashford has embezzled millions of dollars from Nexus Technologies," he announced, his voice smooth as polished marble. "She is currently a fugitive from justice. We are cooperating fully with federal authorities to locate her and recover the stolen assets." A reporter's voice cut through. "Mr. Pemberton, can you comment on the allegations that Nexus has been involved in illegal data manipulation?" Marcus's smile never wavered. Those allegations are the desperate fabrications of a disturbed woman. Vivian Ashford is not well. We hope she receives the help she needs. Garrett turned off the television. Vivian sat motionless, her face pale. They are making me the criminal to cover their crimes. They are scared, Garrett said quietly. Scared people make mistakes. Scared people are also dangerous. That night, Garrett would learn exactly how dangerous. 2 in the morning, the phone rang. Garrett answered in the darkness, not wanting to wake Wren. The voice on the other end was filtered, metallic, cold as a blade pressed against skin. If you continue, your daughter will not just lose her father. She will lose her name, her school, her medical records, her future. Just like her mother lost everything. Click, the line went dead. Garrett sat alone at the kitchen table, staring at his phone. His hands had not stopped shaking since he read those words. Footsteps behind him, small, soft, familiar. Daddy? Wren climbed into his lap, her warmth a comfort he did not deserve. Why are you sitting in the dark? Could not sleep, little bird. She studied his face with those 2 wise eyes. Were you crying? No, It is okay to cry, Daddy. You told me that. After Mama went to heaven, you said tears are just love that cannot stay inside anymore. His throat closed up. This child, this impossible, wonderful child. Daddy, Wren said slowly, are the bad people trying to scare you? Like they scared Miss Vivian. He could not lie to her. He had never been able to lie to her. Yes, sweetheart, they are trying to scare me. Because you want to tell what really happened? Yes. Wren was quiet for a moment, then she said, Daddy, you told me that lying makes your tummy hurt. Do you think maybe the bad people are really scared? Because they told so many lies that their tummies hurt all the time. And they think if they scare everyone else, their tummies will stop hurting? Garrett pulled her closer, this tiny oracle in her oversized sleepwear. I think you might be right, he said. Daddy? Her voice had grown small. Are we going to be okay? He thought about Marlena, about what she had died protecting, about the choice that lay before him now. Yes, little bird, we are going to be okay. Even if the bad people do not like what you say, especially then, because silence is not the same as safety, and some words are worth the risk. Wren snuggled deeper into his arms. I think Mama would
I don't know what to call what we're building.
Maybe it doesn't need a name, just a direction.
want you to be brave. I think that is why she sent Miss Vivian, so you would not have to be brave alone. On the 3rd morning, Garrett made a phone call. Cordelia Trent, human rights attorney. Once a federal prosecutor, now a defender of those the system had failed. She answered on the 2nd ring. Garrett Holloway, she said, and he could hear the recognition in her voice. I wondered when you would call. You know who I am? I know who your wife was. I was building a case against Nexus when she died. They buried the evidence along with her. His hand tightened on the phone. It is not buried anymore. A pause, then, tell me everything. That same morning, as Vivian prepared to leave for the radio station, Wren came running down the stairs clutching a piece of paper. Wait, I made you something. Vivian knelt down as Wren pressed the drawing into her hands. A dog with mismatched wings, invisible scars, flew through a sky full of stars. Its eyes were determined. Its jaw was set. And beside it flew a smaller figure, a bird with wild, curly feathers. It is Moondog, Wren explained. He got left behind once, but he built his own rocket and learned to fly anyway. He is sad sometimes, but he is brave. Vivian studied the drawing. And who is this flying with him? That is me. I'm a wren bird, remember? She pointed to the corner of the page, where a tiny star glowed. And that is Mama. She is watching to make sure we do not get lost. Vivian hugged her tight. I will not get lost, I promise. Pinky promise? They linked their smallest fingers together. Pinky promise. Raymond Cordero's radio station sat wedged between a shuttered mechanic's garage and a 24-hour laundromat. The building looked like it had given up on respectability sometime around 1987. But inside, behind the peeling paint and the coffee-stained carpet, was broadcasting equipment that could reach half the city. Vivian stood in the doorway, the hard drive clutched in her hand, Ren's drawing of Moondog folded carefully in her pocket. Raymond looked up from his console. 68 years old, eyes sharp despite the cataracts clouding them. Once an investigative journalist who brought down governors, now a voice in the wilderness, broadcasting to anyone still willing to listen. Ashford, he said, did not think you would walk through that door. Neither did I. He gestured to the microphone. You got something to say? I have something people need to hear. He studied her for a long moment. Then he cracked his knuckles, flipped 3 switches, and nodded toward the chair. 10 minutes, no edits, no delays. The on-air light blinked red. Vivian took a breath and began. My name is Vivian Ashford. Until last week, I was the CEO of Nexus Technologies. And I am speaking to you tonight because a woman named Marlena Holloway died protecting what I am about to reveal. She spoke for 8 minutes. She spoke of Project Chimera, of the manipulation of public opinion, of elections swayed and markets controlled and lives erased to keep the secret safe. She spoke of Marcus Pemberton and the 17 names on his list of people who had been silenced. Marlena was my best friend, Vivian said, her voice steady despite the tears on her cheeks. When they killed her, she left behind a 4-year-old daughter. That little girl is 7 now, and she believes that everyone can grow wings if they are brave enough to try. I am doing this for her, for Marlena, for everyone they tried to silence. The red light flickered. Died. They jammed us, Raymond said quietly. We are off the air. Through the window, Vivian could see a black SUV pulling up to the curb. Raymond pressed something into her hand, a cassette tape. Backup copy. Go. The rooftop was cold and dark and exposed to the wind. Garrett stood beside a rusted signal booster, cables snaking from his hands to the transmitter he had spent 2 hours piecing together. When Vivian appeared at the roof access door, breathless and bleeding from a scratch on her arm, he simply handed her the tape deck. One chance, he said. 10 minutes of clean signal. They are coming. I know. She looked at him. This janitor who had once been an engineer. This widower who had raised his daughter alone. This man who had every reason to walk away and had not. Why are you doing this? She asked. Because my wife died for this. I will not let you die for it too. She pressed play. Her voice echoed out across the city, from car radios and kitchen counters and phone speakers. Her words poured forth like water breaking through a dam. The roof access door slammed open. Marcus Pemberton stepped through, his charcoal coat pristine, his smile cold enough to freeze the air between them. Derek Sloan followed, one hand resting on the weapon beneath his jacket. Vivian, Marcus said, I taught you everything, including how to disappear. You taught me how to lie. I learned honesty on my own. Such a disappointment. He shook his head sadly. Like Marlena, she could not keep quiet either. Garrett stepped forward. Before you do something stupid, you should know this signal is streaming live to 47 different servers, and a copy of everything reached the FBI 10 minutes ago. Marcus laughed. Bluff. I used to be a systems engineer at your company. You think I do not know how to create a dead man's switch? Vivian reached into her jacket and pulled out the second USB drive. This is not just my evidence, Marcus. This is Marlena's. Everything she collected before you killed her. She sent it to me the day before the accident. Her voice was steady, strong. Every email you wrote ordering people silenced. Every recording of you approving Chimera. Every name on your list. She documented it all. Marcus's smile faltered. You killed my best friend, Vivian said. You left a 4-year-old girl without a mother. You destroyed lives to protect your power. And now the whole world knows exactly who you are. The sound of helicopters filled the air. Searchlights cut through the darkness. Below, sirens wailed as FBI yaw vehicles surrounded the building. Cordelia Trent emerged from the roof access door, a team of federal agents behind her. Marcus Pemberton, Derek Sloan, you are under arrest by order of the Federal District Court. The cameras captured every moment. Marcus Pemberton, the man who had ordered 17 people silenced, who had built an empire on manipulation and murder, stumbled as federal agents guided him toward the waiting vehicle. His perfect composure cracked. His smooth voice broke into protest that no one listened to. "You do not understand," he shouted. "I built Nexus. I made it what it is. You cannot." The car door slammed shut on his words. Cordelia Trent approached Garrett and Vivian, her expression grim but satisfied. 17 counts of conspiracy, 3 counts of murder, including Marlena's. They are going to bury him so deep he will never see daylight again. Garrett felt something loosen in his chest. Not closure, that would take longer, but the beginning of it, the first breath after years of drowning. "Thank you," Vivian said, "for believing us." Cordelia shook her head. "Thank Marlena. She built a case so airtight even the best lawyers in the country could not punch a hole in it. That woman knew exactly what she was doing when she sent you that evidence." By morning, Marcus Pemberton's face would be on every screen in America. The man who killed to keep his secrets, finally facing the consequences of his choices. 2 weeks later, Vivian testified before the Senate. Garrett sat in the gallery, watching as she answered question after question with the same steadiness that had carried her through the rooftop broadcast. When it was his turn to testify about Marlena's evidence in the chain of custody that had preserved it, he spoke of his wife for the first time in years without feeling like the words would break him. Marcus Pemberton was convicted on 23 counts, 45 years, no possibility of parole. The Nexus files dominated headlines for months. Investigations spread. Accomplices were arrested. What had been buried refused to stay underground. 4 weeks after the trial ended, Vivian came to say goodbye. She stood on Garrett's porch, a small suitcase at her feet, her eyes tired but clear. "I need to disappear for a while," she said. "Not because I am scared, because I need to find the person I was before Nexus swallowed her whole." "Where will you go?" "A small town by a lake, 3 states from here. I will be Vivian Jensen, math tutor, the woman who bakes muffins on Saturdays." She smiled softly. "No cell phone, no board meetings, just quiet." Garrett nodded. He understood the need to rebuild, to start from the foundation up. "And us?" he asked. Vivian reached out and took his hand. "I do not know what the future looks like, but I know I do not want to lead you, either of you." The front door burst open. Wren flew across the porch and threw her arms around Vivian's waist. "You promised," she cried. "You promised with your pinky you would come back." Vivian knelt down, brushing the wild curls from Wren's face. "I am not leaving forever, little bird. You and your daddy will visit me. Once a month. I promise." "Pinky promise." They linked their smallest fingers together. Wren leaned close and whispered something that made Vivian's breath catch. Something she would carry with her through all the quiet months to come. "I will miss you, Mama Vivi." 1 year later, a small house sat by a lake 3 states from Seattle. The garden was wild with flowers that grew wherever they pleased. Wind chimes made of old spoons hung from the porch, singing softly in the afternoon breeze. Vivian Jensen stood at the kitchen counter, flour on her apron, muffins cooling on a rack. Through the window she could see the road that led into town, the road that Garrett's car would take any minute now. She checked the clock, smiled. They never came the same route twice, never stayed overnight. But they came. Every month without fail, they came. The sound of tires on gravel made her heart lift. The car door opened, and a small figure burst out before the engine had even stopped. "Mama Vivi!" Wren, 8 years old now, her curls longer, her legs faster, sprinted across the yard and launched herself into Vivian's arms. Vivian caught her, spinning her around, breathing in the smell of sunshine and crayons in pure, uncomplicated joy. "I made you something," Wren announced, waving a folded piece of paper. "It is our family." Garrett walked up the path, his smile soft, his eyes warm. He had changed in the past year. The weight he had carried for so long seemed lighter now. Not gone, some weights you carry forever, but transformed into something bearable. "She worked on it the whole drive," he said. Vivian unfolded the paper. 4 figures stood on a grassy hill beneath a sky full of stars. A tall man with tired eyes and kind hands. A small girl with wild curls and wings growing from her back. A woman with long dark hair and a smile that looked like hope. And above them all, floating on a cloud, a 4th figure, an angel with a silver bracelet on her wrist, looking down at the 3 below. This is Daddy, Ren explained, pointing. And this is me. And this is you, Mama Vivi. And this is Mama Marlena up in heaven. Vivian's vision blurred. What is she doing up there? She is smiling, Ren said simply, because we are happy. They spent the afternoon by the lake. Ren chased fireflies as the sun went down, her laughter echoing across the water. Garrett and Vivian sat on the old wooden dock, their feet dangling above the surface, their shoulders touching. Do you ever think about coming back? Garrett asked. Every day. Vivian watched Ren catch a firefly and release it immediately, giggling as it flickered away. But I like this. The waiting, the looking forward. Every month I have something to hope for. That is not enough for most people. I am not most people. She turned to look at him, and neither are you. He reached over and took her hand. Their fingers intertwined. It was such a small gesture, such a simple thing, but it held within it years of grief and 1 year of healing and something that might, someday, become something more. Ren came running back, a jar of fireflies glowing in her hands. Look, she cried, I caught a whole family. She settled between them on the dock, the jar balanced on her knees, the fireflies blinking in random patterns that almost looked like code. Daddy, she said, her voice growing thoughtful. Mama Vivi, are we the good guys? Garrett looked at Vivian. Vivian looked at Garrett. This question, asked by a child, deserved an honest answer. We tried to be, Garrett said. Is trying enough? Vivian answered, her voice soft. I think trying is all anyone can do. And sometimes trying is enough to change everything. Ren considered this with the gravity of a philosopher pondering the universe. Then she nodded. I think Mama Marlena was trying too. That is why she sent her evidence. And that is why she sent you to us, Mama Vivi, so we could all try together. The fireflies blinked. The stars emerged one by one. Somewhere across the lake, a loon called out to its mate. Daddy, Ren said suddenly, can I let them go? The fireflies? I think they want to be with their families too. Garrett smiled. Go ahead, little bird. Ren unscrewed the lid. The fireflies rose in a spiral of light, dancing upward toward the stars, their glow fading into the vast darkness above. Bye-bye, Ren whispered. Say hi to Mama Marlena for me. They sat there until the moon rose full and silver over the water. Ren fell asleep between them, her head on Garrett's shoulder, her hand still clasped in Vivian's. The sounds of the night wrapped around them like a blanket. Crickets, frogs, the gentle lap of water against the dock. She called you Mama Vivi, Garrett said quietly. She has for a while now. I know. He was silent for a moment. Marlena would have approved. Vivian looked at him, her eyes bright. You think so? I know so. She always said Ren would need someone who understood that strength and softness are not opposites, that the bravest thing a person can do is keep their heart open after it has been broken. He turned to face her fully, the moonlight catching the gray at his temples, the lines around his eyes that came from years of raising a child alone and learning to hope again. I do not know what this is, he said. What we are building, I do not have a name for it. Maybe it does not need a name. Maybe not. He lifted her hand to his lips and kissed her knuckles gently. But whatever it is, I'm grateful for it. She leaned against him. He wrapped his free arm around her shoulders. And there they stayed, the three of them, as the moon traced its arc across the sky and the fireflies that Ren had released flickered in the darkness like tiny defiant stars. The next morning, Garrett and Ren prepared to leave. They stood on the porch, the early light painting everything in shades of gold. Vivian held a small box which she pressed into Ren's hands. What is it? Ren asked. Open it. Inside was a silver bracelet, identical to the one on Vivian's wrist, identical to the one that Marlena had worn. I had it made, Vivian said, for you, so you will always have a piece of your mama with you. Ren stared at the bracelet. Then she threw her arms around Vivian and held on tight. I will wear it forever, she said, until I grow all the way up, and then I will give it to my daughter and tell her about Mama Marlena and Mama Vivi and how our family was made of people who chose each other. Garrett watched them, this woman he had found in an elevator at midnight, and the daughter who had adopted her without hesitation. Family was not always the people you were born to. Sometimes it was the people you found, the people who chose you. the people who stayed. Same time next month? Vivian asked, looking up at him. Same time, he confirmed. Different route. Different route, she agreed. Wren climbed into the car, waving through the window. Garrett lingered a moment longer. Vivian. Yes? Thank you for speaking up, for finding us, for staying. She smiled. Thank Marlena. She is the one who had faith this would work. He got into the car, started the engine, began to pull away. In the rearview mirror, he watched Vivian standing on the porch, one hand raised in farewell, the morning light catching the silver on her wrist. Wren waved until the house disappeared around a bend in the road. Then she settled back in her seat, the new bracelet glinting on her wrist, and said, Daddy? Yes, little bird? I think we are the good guys now, for real. Garrett smiled. What makes you say that? Because we have two mamas looking out for us, one in the sky and one by the lake, and that is the most love any family could ever have. He reached over and squeezed her hand, and they drove on through the morning and into whatever came next, carrying what mattered most with them like a torch that would never go out. Some stories do not end with everyone living under the same roof. Some stories end with people finding their way back to each other, month after month, year after year, choosing love, not in spite of the distance, but because of what that distance taught them once a month. Different route, never overnight, but always, always finding their way home to each other. In the end, that is what it looks like after the storm. Not a fire that burns everything down, but a candle that flickers in the darkness, small and stubborn and impossible to extinguish. And sometimes that is enough. Sometimes that is everything.
This story leaves a clear lesson. The truth, sometimes, doesn't save us immediately, but it saves us in the long run. Garrett lived with pain and self-reproach for years, until he understood that silence isn't safe, it only prolongs the evil. Vivian, once at the pinnacle of power, realized that the greatest power doesn't lie in title or money, but in daring to take responsibility and correct mistakes. Marlena is proof that courage doesn't need to be loud. Sometimes it's simply leaving behind evidence, a path for others to follow when you're no longer there. And Wren, with the innocence of a child, reminds adults that healing isn't about forgetting, but about learning to live with loss while keeping an open heart. Ultimately, family isn't just about blood ties, but about those who choose to stay, choose to protect each other, and choose to believe that after the storm, a small light can still be lit to move forward.